If you have found your way here, I do not believe it was an accident. Something inside you has been looking for a language for what you already feel, the name for a thing that has been moving in you for a very long time. Today, I'm going to give you that language. My name is Minister Dr. Akila Ka Ma'at, and this conversation we're about to have is the foundation of everything I teach. If you have come across my work, if you have heard me speak of the Akh Ascension, the 9 bodies of light, the black light, the dark awake, and some part of you thought, that sounds powerful, but I do not fully understand what she's talking about, then this is for you. This is where it all begins. This is the ground the whole house is built on. So let me tell you exactly what I am promising for you during our time together. By the end, you will understand 3 things. You will understand what the Akh Ascension is all about, not as a soul slogan, but as a map. You will understand where it came from, the real story, the one I lived before I ever studied it. And you will understand the method underneath of it all. A practice I call the power of release, which is where my whole journey began, and which is the engine that makes everything else move. I am not going to rush any of it. This is not a quick tip to scroll past, my friends. This is a teaching. So get comfortable, get something to write with, because you're going to want to. And let us begin at the beginning, which for me began in the dark. I need to tell you the truth about how this work was born, because it did not begin in a library, and it did not begin with a system. It began with a closed fist. There was a season in my life when I was holding on to everything, holding on to old Pan, holding on to who I thought I was supposed to be, holding on to the roles, the resentments, the survival strategies that had carried me that far. My hand was closed around all of it, gripping. And I want you to understand, I thought that grip was strength. I thought that holding on was how you stayed safe. Most of us are taught exactly that. But a closed fist, my friends, cannot receive anything. That is a thing nobody tells you. A hand that is clenched around the past has no room for anything new. It cannot be filled. It cannot be held. It cannot even be read. It was exhausting. I was exhausted from the holding. That season became a book. I called it The Power of Release, journeying from a closed fist into an open hand, because that was the journey, learning to open the hand, learning that release is not a loss. Release is a thing that makes room. The open hand can finally let go of what was killing it. And this is the part people miss, my friends. The open hand is the only hand that can receive what comes next. Now, here is where it became sacred. In that season of learning to release, I began rising before the sun, before the light, before the phone, before the world could file its first claim on me. I would sit in the dark, awake. I call it now the dark awake. I was not trying to achieve anything. I was simply available to whatever wanted to arrive. That was not on my schedule or my to-do list. And in that dark, something opened. I unfolded. That is the only word for it. I unfolded into my own melanin, into the deep, dark generative that everything alive comes out of. And there, in that dark, I discovered something I did not expect. I discovered light. Not light that was coming from outside of me, light that was already in me, that had always been in me, that my world has spent my whole life teaching me to be ashamed of. I call it the black light, the discovery of my power as a melanated being, found not in the day, but in the dark. And here is what I need you to hear, my friends, because it is the whole difference between what I teach, and what everyone else is selling. I didn't read this in a book that I decided to teach. I lived it first in my own release, in my own dark, and in the unfolding. Then, only then, did I go looking for the science of what I had experienced. And the science was there. The scholarship on melanin, the African origin of consciousness, the old Nile Valley wisdom about the soul. Book after book confirmed what the dark had already shown me. It was lived before it was studied, my friends. That sequence is something no one can take from me. And no one can counterfeit it. So the Akh Ascension, the thing you may have come here curious about, did not drop out of the sky. It grew. It grew out of the power of release. It grew out of the dark awake. It grew out of the black light. What began as one woman learning to open her fist became a map of the human soul. And that map is what I want to give you today. I can remember all the psychiatric prescriptions I was taking in my closed fist season for depression, anxiety, panic attacks, and insomnia. And one morning in the dark awake, having the sensation of traveling through Kim, moving through the darkness, being taken somewhere, I received a thought, an intuitive sensation or download, as I call it now, to stop the meds. I sensed I did not need them. After tritating off, I discovered I really didn't. They were blocking my antenna as a Kim being, which really became more concrete when I began reading Dark Light Consciousness by Edward Bruce Bynum. For me, this book took me by surprise, and I felt an overwhelming sense of affirmation that was never there with the meds. This book resonated with the truths I received in the dark awake about my melanin, about my Kim, and I never had any depression, anxiety again. Let me give you the first method, because the method is the key that unlocks everything else. The power of release is not a feeling. It is a practice, and it moves in 3 movements: recognize, release, and reframe. The first movement is recognize. Before you can release anything, you must see it. You must name it. You must recognize the patterns in your life that are no longer serving you. And I want to be precise about where most of those patterns come from, because it matters. Most of them are not even yours. They were installed. Social conditioning. The messages you absorbed about your worth, your body, your place, your limits from a world that had its own reasons for wanting you small. You have been running programs you never chose and calling them your personality, my friends. Recognition is the moment you finally see the program as a program. You cannot release a pattern you refuse to look at. So we start by looking honestly, without flinching. The second movement is release. And here is what most people get wrong. They think release is a decision. They think you just decide to let something go. But you and I both know it doesn't work like that, my friends, because the pattern is not held in place by a thought. It is held in place by emotion. There is grief under that pattern. There is fear. There is rage. There is shame. There is old, unswept sorrow. And as long as the emotion stays frozen, the pattern stays locked. So release is emotional work. It is the practice of letting the frozen thing finally move, letting the grief be grief, letting the rage be witnessed, letting the closed fist finger by finger open. Release is not you losing something. It is you setting something down that has never been yours to carry. And the third movement is reframe. This is where it becomes a new life instead of just a good cry. Once you have recognized the pattern and released the emotion holding it, there is now space, and space wants to be filled. Reframe is a deliberate work of rebuilding something new in that space, a new way of approaching your life, your beliefs, your thoughts, your behavior. But reframe goes deeper than behavior. And this is the part I care most about. In the reframe, you get to unfold a new identity, a new sense of purpose. You get to ask a question that you were never allowed to ask before. Not who was I told to be, but who am I actually becoming? Now, what is my role? It's not that. What am I here to do? You get to see yourself and your rightful placement in your own life in a completely new way. Recognize no longer serves. Release the emotion that keeps it in play. Reframe your life, your beliefs, and behavior, and unfold, my friends. That is the engine. But I must warn you about the danger, because it is the danger this whole next part of my work exists to solve. Release by itself can leave a vacuum. You open the fist, and then you are standing there with an open, empty hand, and a voice says, now what? Now what do I hold? Now who am I? I've watched so many people do the brave work of releasing and then quietly refill their open hand with the same old patterns or with someone else's, simply because no one ever showed them what to unfold into. Release makes the space, but you need somewhere to grow. You need a path. And that is exactly what the Akh Ascension is. I recall in my life when I needed to be externally validated. This pattern played out in my career, love relationships, and when alone, there was nothing to fill that void. This pattern was linked with a feeling of worthlessness. I sat in emotions of shame, of never measuring up, grief of the lack of respect I received as a Black woman in this society, guilt that whatever went wrong was always my fault, and hopelessness that I wasn't, and I couldn't be anything without that external validation. The release was understanding that social conditioning in all areas of my life implanted the lie of my unworthiness, which could be removed. It took time to release the feeling of unworthiness and its emotional links. Releasing that internal residue made space. My reframe was unfolding into metaphysics. I reconstituted my identity, purpose, and journeyed my friends to the power of Kim, Melanin, as a divine, powerful Black woman who is a corporal cosmic energy, inextricable from the divine intelligence. I invite you to locate your own for each, recognize, release, and reframe. This is where the method stops being abstract, my friends. So let me show you the map, the path. Let me show you what you get unfolded into. The people who first mapped the human soul before the pyramids, through Nubia, the land at the source of the Nile, that the world forgets came first, did not teach you that you are one thing. They taught you that you are nine bodies, not one self, but 9 layers of you. And the densest is the radiance that you have within. There is the Khat, your physical body, the temple. There is the Ka, the ancestral life force that runs through your bloodline. There is the Ib, the heart, the seat of consciousness, the part that gets weighed. There is the Ren, your name, the word that makes you real. There is the Shut, the shadow, the part you were taught to fear. There is the Ba, the soul that was built to fly, drawn as a bird for exactly that reason. There is the Sahu, the incorruptible self, the you that no circumstance can touch. There is the Sekhem, your power directed, and there is the Akh, the radiant shining self that forms when all of it comes into union. 9 bodies of light. And here is the promise held inside them, the whole thing in one sentence. When your Ka and Ba unite, when the force of your lineage and the flight of your purpose finally become one, you become Akh, the shining one, a being of usable light. I call the study of this melanin metaphysics, the understanding that your melanin, your Kim, was never just pigment, but an instrument, a receiver, an antenna turned to the same force that moves the stars. And I want to be honest with you about where this map comes from, my friends, because honesty is the matter of everything I build. I did not inherit from this temple. I received this through the Nubia, from the mystic traditions across the African continent, grounded in a published lineage of scholarship. And I credit every stream that flows into this path that is founded. And because it is openly founded, no one can ever expose it. It exists. And hear this clearly because it is what lets you walk this without fear. This is a practice, not religion. And I'm not asking you to convert to anything or to leave your faith that you were raised in. The 9 bodies of light are not anatomy, not deities. You keep your church, your family, your life. This is a technology of the soul. This is a map, 9 bodies. But 9 is a great deal to walk at once. So the ancients grouped them into 3 gates. 3 gates. And I need you to watch closely now because I'm about to show you, my friends, how the method I live, recognized, release, reframe, and the map the ancients drew, the 9 bodies are the same thing. They were always the same thing. I simply did not have the words before. The first gate, Ka, the return. It holds the first 3 bodies, the Ka, the Ib, the body, the bloodline, and the heart. And what is the work of that gate? It is the descent. It is going down into yourself to see what is truly there, my friends. That is recognized. The gate of Ka is where you recognize the patterns, the conditioning, the body you were taught to abandon, the heart that has been on trial. You cannot release what you have not first descended into to recognize. The first gate is the first movement. The second gate is the gate of Ba, the flight. It holds the Ren, the shoot, the Ba, the name, the shadow, the soul. And what is the work of that gate? You reclaim the name they erased. You turn and embrace the shadow you exiled. And you release your soul into flight. That is release. The gate of Ba is the power of release itself, made into a path. It is the closed fists finally opening. It is the passage I've spent my whole life teaching, from forced to force. The second gate is the second movement. And the third gate is the gate of Akh, the shining. It holds the Sahu, the Sakim, the Akh, the incorruptible self, directed power, and the radiant union. And what is the work of that gate? You reframe who you are. You reclaim your purpose and your power. You unfold into a self that is sovereign. That is the reframe. That is the unfolding. The gate of Akh is where you finally answer the question that release left open. Now, who am I? And the answer is, I am the shining. The third gate is the third movement. Recognize is the gate of Ka. Release is the gate of Ba. Reframe is the gate of Akh. Do you see it, my friends? My method is a drivetrain of this ancient map. The map is my method made vast. It is one journey, a descent, and a return, down into recognition, the release, and up into the reframe, from forced to force to shining. The power of release is the door. The Akh Ascension is the house you walk into once the door is open. And every room in that house has a name, a practice, and a purpose. You are not just releasing anymore. You have finally somewhere to unfold. Recognize is the gate of Ka. Release is the gate of Ba. Reframe is the gate of Akh. And every room in that house has a name and a practice and a purpose. And you are not just releasing anymore. You are finally having somewhere to unfold. Let me turn this towards you now, because a map is useless if you do not know you are standing on it. You have spent a long time, my friends, recognizing what hurts. Maybe you have done the brave work of releasing some of it. And if you are honest, there is a part of you standing in that open-handed space, asking a very simple question that I ask myself. Now what? What am I unfolding into? Here is what the Akh Ascension answers. You are unfolding into your identity, the real one, underneath the conditioning, the one no verdict wrote and no crowd can revise. You are unfolding into your purpose, the direction your soul has always wanted, has always been trying to fly before the grind harnessed it. And you are unfolding into your sovereignty, authority over your own life, your own energy, your own becoming. Identity, purpose, sovereignty, my friends. This is what waits on the other side of the open hand. That is what you get to grow into. And it is not about becoming someone new. Let me be clear. Because the world sells you endless self-improvement, endless fixing, as if you were broken. You are not broken. You never were. This is about unfolding into who you have always been, underneath everything they piled on top of you. The releasing clears the pile. The path reveals the person, and the person was and is always sacred. So let me leave you with this, and let me tell you where to go next, my friends. You came here maybe not knowing exactly what the Akh Ascension was. Now you hold the map. You know the method. Recognize, release, reframe. You know the origin, that it was lived in the dark before it was ever studied in the light. And you know the three gates you get in this walk: the return, the flight, and the shining. What we did today is the door, and the door is open to everyone. So if this has reached you, subscribe and take the free companion guide with you so that this becomes a practice and not just a beautiful evening. But the door is only an invitation. The real journey is through the gates. And this is where we go next. In the three teachings that follow this one, the foundations, we walk each gate all the way down and all the way through. The gate of Ka and the work of recognize, the gate of Ba and the work of release, the gate of Akh and the great reframe, the unfolding into identity, purpose, and sovereignty. That deeper work is where you stop understanding the path and begin to walk it. Thank you, my friends. Thank you.